878. Europe's largest island resembles the final moments of a sinking ship. The kingdoms on the island are surrounded by blood one after another. Northumbria has fallen, East Anglia has disappeared, Mercia has knelt. Now on the British island, only one kingdom remains from an entire civilization, Wessex. And its 29-year-old young king has been driven from the country's capital and is hiding hungry and bare in impassable marshes. He has no army, he has no crown, he has no hope. The world's most fearsome army, the Vikings, are celebrating their victory. But history is written at moments when you think everything is over. This video is the story of how a man who lost everything in a marsh, not just with his sword, but with his mind and strategic intelligence, saved an entire nation from death. He was never supposed to be king. 849. Alfred is born on the British island, the fifth son living in the shadow of four older brothers in the kingdom of Wessex. Exactly four people stood before him in the line of succession to the throne. No one saw Alfred as the future king. It was thought that he had absolutely no chance of becoming king. But there was something different about him. When Alfred was just 4 years old, his father sent him to Rome. This was actually not at all an ordinary event for the 9th century. The roads stretching from Wessex to Rome usually took months, and at every step, every crossing, there was danger of death. But his father took this risk and sent Alfred to Rome. In Rome, Pope Leo IV received Alfred with a special ceremony and anointed him with holy oil. Historians still put forward many theories about the meaning of this ceremony. Some evaluate it as a divine selection for kingship. Young Alfred carried this moment in his heart for the rest of his life. God has chosen me for a special mission. This thought perhaps laid the foundation of his character. After returning from Rome, an event that would change his destiny awaited him. His mother Osper gathered her sons around the table, placed her very precious, ornately decorated poetry book in the middle and said, "Whoever memorizes this book first, it will also belong to them." None of his older brothers had any interest in reading books. But little Alfred immediately found a teacher, listened to the book line by line, memorized it and recited the poem before his mother, receiving his reward. The fact that a prince in the 9th century was more interested in books than military training was the first herald of what kind of strategist Alfred would be in the future. The sick king. As Alfred grew up, his health faced a serious test, a chronic and severe illness. His personal biographer Asa writes that the king suffered from sudden, unbearable pain that came at the most wrong moments, in the middle of the most important battles, state councils. Modern medical experts, based on these symptoms, suspect that Alfred had Crohn's disease. In his youth, Alfred had prayed to God asking for an illness that would keep him away from sins but would not damage his outward appearance. But the pain he received as a result of this prayer was seemingly far more severe than he had expected. 871. Alfred finds himself at the age of 21 as the owner of the throne. Because four older brothers had passed away one after another, some in battle, some as a result of illness. He was practically not ready for governance, and no one had had time to prepare him either. Moreover, the greatest and most terrible threat humanity had ever seen stood at the door, the Vikings. The great heathen army. When this name was heard, all of Europe trembled. Since 865, these enormous and fearsome pagan armies had begun to invade England, and the island was already being torn apart. Northumbria was occupied, East Anglia fell, Mercia knelt. Every year a kingdom was erased from the map. Blood had come to rule the island. As soon as Alfred ascended the throne, he was forced to enter into battle with the Vikings and suffered a heavy defeat at the Battle of Edington. Helpless, he made a difficult decision. He forced them to retreat by paying the enemy a large sum of money. This is called Danegeld Danish gold in history. Modern history books don't like to highlight this fact, because they think it casts a shadow on the image of the hero who saved England. But Alfred was a pragmatic leader. He was not simply giving gold, he was buying time for future battles in exchange for the gold, and this told of what a strategist he was. The night everything was lost, January of 878, the last night of the Christmas feast, the Vikings had chosen the most unexpected moment for attack with an interesting tactic. Alfred's army was in a festive mood and was caught completely unprepared. The merciless leader of the Vikings, Guthrum, seized the king's headquarters in Chippenham with a sudden raid. Alfred managed to escape from this attack with difficulty. The great cities of Wessex were surrendering one by one. The local population began to submit to the Vikings, and part of the nobility crossed the waters and fled to Francia. Alfred took refuge to the southwest, in the impassable marshes of Somerset, the Isle of Athelney. This was not actually even an island, it was a small piece of dry land surrounded by deep and dangerous marshes. Those who did not know the way would drown in these marshes. The great King of Wessex was spending his days here, with illness, hungry and with dark thoughts. But this marsh would not be an end for Alfred and England, it would be a new beginning. He was not simply hiding, he was also calmly making plans. He was sending his spies to scout the surroundings. According to legend, Alfred himself, disguised as a musician, infiltrated the Viking camp and, with his own eyes, observed the enemy's weak points. The return. After months spent in the marsh, Alfred was sending messages through secret messengers to all Wessex warriors. A meeting place and time were set. May of 878, Egbert's Stone. The king did not know how many of them had survived or how many would join this call, but they came. Biographer Asa writes that when the warriors saw their king safe and sound before them, the forest trembled with their cries of joy. Just 1 week after this event, the famous Battle of Edington took place, which changed the course of history and rewrote the fate of Britain. Alfred proved he was a genius. It was precisely with his tactics that the English smashed the Viking army to pieces. Guthrum's remaining army took refuge in a fortress, and after a 2-week merciless siege they were forced to surrender. And at this moment Alfred took an extraordinary step that shocked everyone. He did not execute Guthrum and his commanders. Instead, he made it a condition that they accept Christianity. Alfred himself personally became the godfather of his enemy Guthrum and gave him an English name, Aethelstan. Then he allocated land for them to settle in the east of England. This was not simple mercy, this was a calculated, brilliant political move. Alfred understood that it was impossible to put all Vikings to the sword. But bringing them into his own system and managing them was a more logical option. Guthrum's becoming Christian had ensured that he would stand alongside Wessex against other Viking raids. The rebuilding of England. After the great victory, Alfred did not relax even for a moment. Because he knew well that the Vikings would definitely come again. He immediately created the Burr system. This was a network of fortified towns scattered across Wessex. The mathematical calculation was simple, but equally brilliant. No village or settlement in the kingdom should be more than 20 miles from the nearest fortress. He documented how many soldiers were needed in proportion to the wall length of each fortress, 4 soldiers for each 5-meter section of wall. This military document is still preserved today and is known in history as the Burgle-Hidage. This was a unique national defense doctrine for the 9th century. After doing all of this, Alfred had one more plan. He turned his attention to the sea. The Viking superiority at sea was known to everyone, and Alfred had his own ships built to put an end to this superiority. But he did not blindly copy the enemy. While Viking ships typically had 30 to 40 oars, Alfred's newly designed ships had 60 oars. They were longer, faster and more stable at sea. Alfred laid the foundations of a new military naval fleet to defeat the enemy at sea, precisely in the field where they were strong. A weapon stronger than a sword. But the greatest mark Alfred left in history was neither in the army he built, nor in the ships he had constructed. The 890s. The king sat every night by candlelight and wrote books. He personally translated Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy and Pope Gregory's Pastoral Care from Latin into Old English. Moreover, he was not simply a translator, he added his own philosophical thoughts, his notes on state governance between the texts. This activity made Alfred one of the first English authors whose name remains in history. He sent copies of these books to every bishop in the kingdom and wrote this note on them. We have fallen so far behind that practically no one who understands the Latin language remains in the country. We must absolutely fix this situation. Imagine for a moment, one man both protects his country from the merciless Vikings, converts his enemy to Christianity, and draws them to his side, builds a perfect defense network, designs a new generation of warships, and also sits at night translating books for the enlightenment of his people. And alongside all of this, he himself was also struggling with chronic, severe illness. In a world where he was never born to be king. In 899 Alfred passed away at the age of 50. The system he built was working perfectly. His son Edward the Elder and his grandson Aethelstan were able to take this legacy even further. And finally, in 927 his grandson Aethelstan was declared the first official king of a united England. The English do not call Alfred the Great for nothing. He is the founding father of modern England. But never forget, this brilliant statesman was that very refugee, hiding helplessly in a marsh hut in that terrible winter of 878. Therefore, in history it is not right to pass judgment on anyone without first seeing the end of the story.